All right, how's everybody doing today? I don't know if it's tonight where you are yet. This is, I think, the earliest stream that I've ever done. And I know not everybody is on the East Coast. It's 5:30 here, so I figured there might be a few people around. And this is the only time I think this week that I could do a stream. So I figured I might as well do it, see if I can get people to come to the stream. And we're just going to talk, like I said last week, about great comic runs again. I was hoping to have Sequential Treasures on once more, but again, don't know what time zone he's in. So I did send him the link. And if he manages to show up, great. If not, we'll have to do without and have him on some other time. Definitely will have him on some other time. So let's see. If someone could just give me a quick shout out in the chat, make sure that you can hear me. And we got some people here that not usually here. Mystic is the first one in the chat and says hello, hola, and he's at the gym. She's at the gym. I don't know, Mystic. Mystic is at the gym, so not going to be very chatty. So I'm catching people a little bit off guard with this stream. Manny is here, and Zaktan, I think, is at work, but he's here. Let's see. Who else we got in the chat? 7974. Let's see. What are my thoughts on? Oh, okay. I'll get to your questions in a minute. 7974. Let's get to the rest of the chat with the morning or right this moment. Let's see. 6549. Elf. What is that? Elf as Ask it done. I don't know. Anyways, ask what character is that? That's one of my characters. That is actually a poster that you can get with, any of my campaigns now, because this is one of the characters posters that sold out like really quickly. But this is Cardinal, one of my characters. She will be, she was in, let's see, Thomas Valiant. No, the Valiant Heroes, which is the second campaign that I did. She's going to be in the Thomas Valiant number 2, which is the new campaign that Renzo is working on. And she's also going to be in the manga style book, which I'm doing with an artist who does manga. He's in Japan. It's Artemis, basically, because Artemis is Cardinal's sidekick. So Cardinal's going to be in that one as well. So a lot of Cardinal coming up in a lot of my books, just to let you know. So that is my character, but we'll be switching off to some great comic runs and some good comic covers in a minute or two. Let's see. Loud and clear, Manny. Thank you very much, Manny. George is here. Says, hey, y'all. Let's see. I also wanted to just let everybody here know that there probably won't be any live stream next week. I apologize, but I'm going to be traveling and I'm going to be on the other side of the world. I'm going to take my computer with me, but heaven only knows if I'm ever going to get a chance to actually do a live stream. So I'm going to be traveling for a couple of weeks, but I'm hoping by 2 weeks from now, I'll be in a place where I can actually do a live stream 2 weeks from tonight. But next week, I really don't think it's going to be possible. Apologize to everybody in advance for that. But hey, what can you do? Life is life. Elijah is here as well. So we're getting a lot of people in the chat. A lot of our normal people in the chat. Great to see. Let's see. So, I wanted to also say very quickly that the trailer that we watched, the first is Fade to Blue. That's another book we're working on. We're almost finished of that one because it's in black and white. We still have a little bit about, I don't know, a little more than 8-10 pages left on the third book for that one, because it's going to be basically floppy length and available digitally as well, as far as I know. So the link for that is in the description if you want to go and sign up for the sign up page to know when that campaign goes live and where you can get it and all that kind of stuff. So all you do is leave your email address and I will email you as soon as it's available and you can order it. And, that's that. Besides that, this is my normal stream. If anybody is here because I'm on so early, who's not normally here, what I usually do is talk about something for 15 and 20 or 20 minutes and then answer all the questions in the chat. So if you have a question for me on anything, on what I'm talking about tonight, on my characters, on my books, on my Saturday videos, on anything you want, just put it in the chat and put a question mark or tag me in it, and I will know that you're talking to me, not to someone else in the chat. And I will try to get to everybody's comments before the end of the chat. So, although Sequential Treasures is not here, let's see. Let me share the screen here for a second. Let's go to cover viewer. Give me 1 second. let's see. I have the Thor covers still pulled up because let's see, we'll make this as big as possible. No, that is as big as possible. So, my favorite run of comics is this run of comics. I talked about this last week. I talk about it a lot. I think it is the best run of comics ever. Walter Simonson's Thor, culminating in the Destroyer arc, which is down here, down at the bottom. We get to it before we hit the end. So I love Walter Simonson, by the way. Not only his art, but his storytelling as well. And the Destroyer. So 381 is what I think is the best comic ever. But as I said, Sequential Treasures is not here. Unfortunately, I had to really just make a decision and decide to stream early or not at all. And that was an off the cuff thing. But with that, Sequential Treasures did forward me some great comic runs that he wanted to actually include in this great comic run tonight. So let's look up some of them here. He says Daredevil. Let's see. Let's go to Daredevil. And what number? No. We want Daredevil. There we go. And he says one of the great runs that he would talk about is Daredevil 250 to 282. So let's go 250 to 282. And there you go. This is Nocenti's run on Daredevil. Okay. Beautiful run on Daredevil. Again, with John Romita Jr. I love John Romita Jr. Not so much the stuff that he's putting out right now, but his stuff in the 80s was superb, if you ask me, especially his X-Men. I love John Romita Jr. And here's, okay, I always, when I hit this cover, and I usually tell this story. I think I might have told this story last week, but this one you see on your left, which is Daredevil number 252, which is the Fall of the Mutants tie-in. That's the first Daredevil I ever bought, because prior to that point, my brother always bought Daredevil. And so I didn't need to buy Daredevil. And I bought this, which is part of the Fall of the Mutants. So basically, what happens in the Fall of the Mutants, if I remember correctly. So what Daredevil is dealing with in New York is that one of the entities that had taken over Limbo, which was originally prior to that was the Hell dimension controlled by Mystique or by Magique, and before that it was Belisario. It was Belisco. I can't remember how it pronounced his name. Anyways, it's a Hell dimension. So it was Sims, I think, took over, and one of the things that was happening was they were trying to bring this Hell dimension onto Earth, and they were doing it in New York, and it was summertime, and there was a heat wave going on in New York, and on top of that you have these portals opening up into hell. So that's what Daredevil is fighting here in 252. And this is the book that made me buy Daredevil myself, was because me, my two brothers, and my father all went. We didn't really go on a trip. My father was trying to go somewhere to get a part for our satellite dish, and in order to get to where we needed to go, we had to go across the ferry. But it was middle of summer and it was so hot, and everybody was trying to get on this ferry. The lineup was insane. And we were driving I don't know what it was. What year is this? Let's see. I can't remember. Let me see if I can't look close enough at the covers to find out what year it is. But I'm going to say mid 80s, late 80s. I can't remember off the top of my head. Anyways, but yeah, it was the middle of summer, and there was a heat wave going on where I was, and we were waiting in line for this ferry, and we were in our, let's say, 1986 black T-Bird, okay, and there was four of us, so the T-Bird only sits four, and it was black. We had the top off, but it was just boiling in that car. And so my father decided, okay, we're never going to get across. So he decided to walk across on the ferry and then just take a taxi to where he was going and get the parts and come back. So we were stuck. Me and my brothers, I think one of my brothers, my oldest brother, he did have his license at that time, but he basically said, I don't know when I'll be back, stay here. And so we were sitting in this parking lot of this ferry terminal, and the sun, it was midday, heat wave, sun beating down on this black car. The only thing anywhere even close to something to do at this place was a tiny little gift shop that had air conditioning, but they wouldn't let you go in unless you bought something. So this is what I bought: Daredevil number 252. And I sat there and I read it, and I thought this was the greatest thing ever. And well, I suppose it was brought on a little bit by the fact that I was undergoing some of the same things that was going on in my life as was going on in the book. Oh, look, Sequential Treasures is here. You might have been here for a little while. I was on the wrong screen. Let's see. We'll add them to screen and we'll talk about this run. Sequential Treasures, how you doing?
Hey, glad to be here, RJ.
One second. I apologize, Sequential Treasures. 1 second. I got a little bit of technical difficulties. 1 second before I can unmute you. Hold on, everybody. All right. Let's see if we're connected. Take him off mute. Can't unmute guest because what does it say? Okay.
I don't know. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. It's just okay. I kept earphones on because I was by myself, so I had to stop the reverb really quickly. So apologies for having to do this so early, but it's the only time I could stream. But we started with your suggestions with Daredevil 250.
Yeah, I love this run. This is like, to me, like the quintessential Daredevil run. You had Nocenti, who was kind of following in the footsteps of Miller, because it's much more grittier than Daredevil had been before, and this is following right after Frank Miller's classic Born Again storyline. And I just loved how where I said last time when we talked about some great runs, I mentioned the Jim Starlin run on Batman, and said what he did, he injected something into the origins of Batman without changing any of his history or any of the lore that had happened before it, and that's something a lot of guys try to do when they fail. Nocenti, she does the other thing that people do today and always fail. She injected political themes into the stories, but they never overtook the characters or the story being told. It was never about this is my politics, and I'm trying to make you understand this is what you have to believe like I believe. It was sort of like more like, here's a political theme, and this is how it's being used to tell the story rather than it being the story. And that's what she did so well in this. And up until about maybe about towards the last storyline she did, where she got a little more metaphysical and more, into like what is a hero and how do you corrupt a hero and all this other, sort of like high concept stuff. But up until that point, it was like very much like a very political book, but yet it wasn't like divisive politics. It wasn't like trying to tell you what to think. It was just presenting a story based in a political theme. Like, there's a great storyline that runs through about, about a child who gets his eyes messed up, and Daredevil has to go into court to fight against a company owned by the Kingpin, which has blinded the boy. And there's a whole theme that runs through all of that. And it's like, that's a great story, but yet it's not like telling you, you got to believe a certain way. It's all about just, this is the way the story presents itself, and it's all about the characters. And that's what Nocenti does so well. She really knows how to inject the politics to enhance the characters rather than the other way around, which is what is done, where the characters are used to enhance the politics. And I love that about this run. It's just a masterclass in how to do it. And so many fail when they try today to do what she did here, what seemingly was so effortless.
I think the reason why she was able to do it is because, well, I covered this on my channel probably about 3, 4, maybe 5 years ago. She did an interview with current Marvel, but I am probably the farthest thing from Ann Nocenti's politics that you can get. I don't like her politics, but she tried, and she was actually, and she said this in the interview she did a couple of years ago. She said, she knew it was an old boys club, and she tried to fit in. She tried to actually understand what was going on and what comics were about. She even took classes, boxing classes, I think it was, so that she could learn how to take a punch and throw a punch, because she knew that it was all about action. It was all about conflict and all these things. And it's like, yeah, she put in her politics here and there, but at the same time, she was trying to fit into Marvel and bring something into it that wasn't previously there, which is completely different than what you get today, which is them trying to take over and change the entire system of Marvel. But yeah, like I said, I don't like her politics, but she can write a really good story. And back in the time when she was writing these Daredevil, I don't know what she does now. I honestly don't. But when she was writing these Daredevil, she was trying to fit into the Marvel mold, and she knew what comics were about because she studied and she asked and she took, she took on Frank Miller's Daredevil. Only a crazy person would do that. Just follow up Frank Miller. It's like,
yes. That is like, it's like being a comedian and stepping on stage after Robin Williams. It's like, you just don't want to be that guy.
No. I want to just deal with a couple of questions we got in the chat. Early question we got from 7974. What are my thoughts on Hal Foster's Prince Valiant? I don't know off the top of my head which version, which time Hal Foster was dealing with Prince Valiant, but I do love Prince Valiant so much so that my character, Thomas Valiant, I always think of him, this is not canon, but I always think of him as if he were a descendant of Prince Valiant. So yeah, I like the Prince Valiant stuff. Let's see what else we got here. Any other questions? Scrolling down. Oh yeah, there was a question. Where do I find the artists to draw your scripts? Quite honestly, because I'm on YouTube and I do a lot of stuff about heroes, most of the artists come to me and say, can I do something with you? So I don't really go looking for artists. Most of the artists come looking for me. Let's see. Oh, Rex says here's a good one. Rex says, anything. Oh, so Ehrlich. Yes. Ehrlich. I think Walter Simonson did an Ehrlich run. Did he not? It's Elric. Sorry, Elric. I always get the name wrong. Do you remember that Sequential Treasures?
I think I remember something like that. The one I remember with Elric was I think one done by P. Craig Russell. That's what I remember.
There were DC books, if I remember.
I believe so. Yeah, I believe they were DC.
Okay. Let's see. Anything? I don't know if there's anything on the cover site about Elric. Quite honestly. Yes. Thank you very much, George. That's how you say the name of the creature that I was talking about.
Actually, you got it slightly twisted. You were talking about Inferno, which was a year after.
Was it?
During Fall of the Mutants, it was where the adversary was attacking. Forge? He had to fight the adversary, and the X-Men end up dying to stop him. And then, of course, but they're brought back, of course, by the goddess Rama. But they're invisible to film cameras and things like technology cannot register them. They're almost like they're invisible. And that's how they become like a black ops team during the Australian Outback storyline. Meanwhile, in X Factor, they're dealing with Apocalypse, and that's what happened in that Daredevil 252. Was there was a power outage caused by X Factor's battle with Apocalypse, and that's what Daredevil deals with. He deals with all of a sudden the power is out in New York City, and it's all the all this stuff that we would see today that would happen if there was like a big power outage in a major city. There's going to be riots. There's going to be all kinds of mayhem, and Daredevil's dealing with all of that. And he meets this new guy named Ammo, is the name of the character, and he's like you're like a kind of guy who wanted to be like a leader of Antifa type of thing, and that's who he was, and that's who he faces in that story. So yeah, that's what was happening in those. But yeah, the one you were talking about was the Inferno storyline where Sim had taken over in Limbo, and him and Nastor was trying to bring all the demon world to Earth. And we're using Madeline Pryor to do it.
So the second one on your list would be Punisher 1987. Let's see if I can pull up some of the 19.
That's the Punisher War Journal. But yeah, the Punisher 1987 series by Mike Barron is another classic.
Yeah, it's War Journal. The cover browser is not the best for when you're trying to look up something very quick.
If you typed in Punisher 1987, it might be able to bring it up.
No, unfortunate for that. We'll just put in Punisher, and that's probably what it is. Let's see, Punisher.
There it is.
There's the original miniseries to begin with.
This is the regular series that came after the miniseries. There was a miniseries by Stephen Grant and Mike Zeck.
Because I did the Mike Zeck with the Mike Zeck covers. You're correct. Yep.
And then here's the first few issues are with Klaus Janson, just beautiful work. But to me, it's like, to me, Mike Barron's Punisher is the Punisher. Like the way he wrote him, the utility. Like when you read the captions of his thoughts and stuff, it's all like utilitarian minded. There's not a lot of emotion. There's not a lot of deep character stuff with him. It's just all very on the surface, and that's very much how you would expect the Punisher to think. He's not a deep thinker. He's very much just a matter of fact type of guy. Right here at issue 9, right here with the ninja on the cover. That's a great issue because that's the issue where Microchip's son dies. And to me, the end of that story was just the perfect Punisher moment. Microchip's son has died while helping the Punisher on a mission. And then all of a sudden he comes back and he just hands Microchip the body and goes, "I'm sorry, man." And then he turns and just walks away, stone-faced. And it's like, that to me, like, that's the Punisher.
Yep.
It's just he's totally devoid of like all this stuff that he does. It's completely personal, of course. His whole war is personal, but yet he himself never gives off any personage. You know what I'm saying? Like, no emotion comes from what he does. It's just all very matter of fact. I've always thought Mike Baron's stories perfectly reflected that mentality of the Punisher.
I think, quite honestly, Mike Baron is the one who wrote the lore for the Punisher. That's basically, in my mind, the core of Punisher and the lore that everything comes off of is Mike Baron, except for the very, origin and things like that with the stuff that he has in Spider-Man. Even that stuff is overshadowed by Mike Baron's Punisher.
Well, the way I see it is like the same way I look at Tim Drake Robin. It was Marv Wolfman who created Tim Drake, but yet no one has done more to define who Tim Drake is than Chuck Dixon. So even though it was Marv Wolfman who created Tim Drake really feels like it's Chuck Dixon's character because he is so defined who Tim Drake as a character is. And I feel the same way about the Punisher. It was Jerry Conway, and then later, like I said, the miniseries with Stephen Grant, who did those bits of the Punisher. But to me, it's Mike Baron's run. He defines who the Punisher is. And that's like, when you think the Punisher, you're thinking the Mike Baron run.
Let's see. Let's comment here. I'm thinking about reading Punisher Max by Garth Ennis wrote. I don't know about Garth Ennis. You might want to. I would suggest, if you haven't read this stuff first, read this stuff first.
Yeah, definitely read the Baron stuff before you read the Garth Ennis stuff. If you're going to read it at all, you definitely want to read Mike Baron's stuff first.
I love that Magnolia cover.
That's actually the first issue of the Punisher I ever picked up off the newsstands, was that cover.
Now, the reason why I put the thumbnail that I did on this stream was because one of your suggestions was the New Warriors. And that was one of the books that I picked up from issue number 1. This Punisher I picked up from issue number 1 too, but it was never, Punisher was just so everywhere at that point. But New Warriors was a series that, I don't know. That's issue 34. That's what it is.
If you click up there where it says New Warriors, it might bring up the whole run.
There you go. Yeah. But yeah, having a new team, that was something. And back in the 90s, it was something special. And I picked up the New Warriors from issue number 1. Nimorita was one of my favorite characters. This run it tried to redefine what heroes were for Marvel in the 90s vein, but I think that it did a lot better job than, let's say, the X-Force or anything else, because they were heroes that already existed, but it seemed like a team that would actually mesh together and actually, stay together. Sometimes I was looking at things like, X Factor, X-Force, and going, why are these people even together besides the fact they're all mutants, right?
Yeah, I felt the same way. To me, the New Warriors is sort of like Excalibur was for the mutant books. This is more like for like your Avengers style book. This is what the New Warriors represent to me, is like the new generation of Avengers. Whereas Excalibur, if you've ever read that series, they sort of came together in a similar way. Like they were like all these like leftover people when they thought the X-Men were dead, and they came together to create a team because like the dream has to survive, so we're going to carry the torch, and that's kind of how they came together. The New Warriors is kind of a similar thing, where like they see what's going on in the world, and like the young people got to get involved. We got to change the world, and so we're going to come together to change the world, and that's kind of what they're all about.
I do remember, if just I think off the top of my head, there was two versions of issue number one's cover. There was the one you could get at the newsstand and the one you could get at the comic book shop. Because the one you could get at the comic book shop, if I remember correctly, had a faux cover on it, so that there was the cover underneath, and then there was the cover on top of that, which was like a hard paper. And you could actually, there was a hole in it, so you could see what was underneath. So it was a big deal for the new.
Well, and the book was so popular they actually did a second printing of issue one, where, like you saw there, it's all in red, it's in gold instead, and that's a second print they put out because it was just so popular at the time. And this to me is where Mark Bagley really comes into his own. You know, a lot of people, they herald his Spider-Man work, and of course, he did a great run on Spider-Man, but this is really where he comes into his floor, is on the New Warriors. This is where I first really took, I mean, I'd read some of Bagley's stuff before this, but this is where I really took note of Bagley as a great artist, was on New Warriors, and this is really where he comes into his own, and it was definitely his work on this book that got him the Spider-Man gig, so.
And the thing is that I know this now from experience, but having a book with this many characters really puts a strain on your artist. I mean, because I have my characters which is a team, right? And the team book, I'm always looking for shortcuts for Renzo. And I'm just looking at cover, like for number 4, thinking to myself, how many of these characters don't have hair? Because that's one of the things, why do so many comic characters wear helmets or have slick back hair or look like, they have a hood or things like that? Is because you have a team and you have an artist who only can do so much. You try to make little bits here and little bits there of giving him something that he doesn't have to draw too much of. Yeah, and Bagley does a great job keeping up with what he needed to do for a team book.
Well, he is one of, if not the most prolific pencilers in all of comic history. I mean, there are few, if any, who can boast the amount of just sheer volume of pages they have drawn than Mark Bagley. I mean, there's nobody out there who I can think of. I mean, maybe Sal Buscema might hit that mark, maybe, but I mean, there's like nobody who really like just grinds out the pages the way Bagley can do it. He's like a machine almost. I mean, there was a point where he was like doing like 2 regular series and like a little, once in a while, a little one-offs here and there. And it's like, just that's incredible amount of work for any artist. I mean, not since like the Jack Kirby's and stuff, if you saw people grinding it like that.
I always thought that Bagley was very much like Paul Smith, not only in the fact that he has a lot of, for Paul Smith, who I love, his curves are very subtle, and it's always a rounded shape that he uses, as opposed to someone like Frank Miller or Klaus Janson or Walter Simonson. But also, he doesn't do backgrounds, which works very well for Paul Smith, if you ask me. And Bagley does the same thing. He cuts the corner in a very specific way, and he gives you enough to concentrate on for your action in the foreground, so he doesn't put anything in the background. I think that's one of the problems with comics today. They're just trying to do too much.
Well, if you back it up just a little bit there to number 8, that issue, that to me right here, that issue alone, this is like, to me, the greatest issue of the entire series is this, just for like the first 4.5 pages of the battle between Night Thrasher and the Punisher. I mean, you just talked about action. It's like, you want action. Those pages are just incredible. I mean, it was like, at the time, I'm like 16 when I'm reading this, and it was so violent and so bloody. It's like, my God, it's almost like a horror book. It was so graphic, for a mainstream, Comics Code approved comic. And yet, there's a scene he's fighting with the Punisher because the Punisher thinks that his girlfriend's silhouette is involved in a gang. And so the Punisher shows up to try to find out what's going on. And Night Thrasher's there, and so they start a fight. And he's shooting at him. He's blocking it with the skateboard, which has a blade in the end. And he cuts him in the shoulder with it. He jams it down into his leg. I mean, the Punisher is like jacked up in this fight, big time. I mean, and then the Punisher kicks him off him, and he puts his gun like at a point blank range. It's like fires like 4 times into Night Thrasher's armor. It's like the most action-packed story ever done in the entire series of the New Warriors. I'm like, man, this is just, you can't get better than this.
Night Thrasher is a character which was created the exact opposite of what you get today, because the way he was created was who was writing this right at this moment?
It was Fabian, how you pronounce that last name? Naziai?
Yeah.
Naziai?
What
He was the one writing it.
the fellow who created Night Thrasher, basically he said he would go down to the newsstand every once in a while, and he would talk to the guy who run the newsstand. He said, "What are kids actually into today?" And he would give him a bunch of magazines. And he did this one time, and he gave him a whole bunch of skateboard magazines, and that's where he got the inspiration to create Night Thrasher. Is like, listen to your audience, see where they're going, and go there first.
Yeah, I remember in his first appearance in Thor 412 when they fight the Juggernaut with Thor, and Night Thrasher is like throwing these like little bombs at the Juggernaut, and the Juggernaut's like a super dude on a skateboard. Now I've seen everything.
So let's see. I think 13. I don't know. No, Bagley continued on after that.
Oh yeah, he did the first 25 issues minus number 24.
That's great covers as well. I love like
yeah, I mean just like look at that cover to number 20. So intense. It's just got so much drama. It's just in the image alone.
Marvel Boy was never my favorite character, to say the least. I'm glad they did not try to make him. Well, he was, if I remember correctly, sort of the backup leader for the New Warriors, and he eventually becomes the leader of the Guardians of the Galaxy. But he's an older character that I never really fully embraced. But there's plenty of other characters, and Speedball was one that, if I remember correctly, he was introduced in Spider-Man.
Amazing Spider-Man Annual 22. Yes, that's Speedball's first appearance.
Yeah, and there's a lot of characters that they tried to basically. It's almost like the Teen Titans of Marvel. It's like you have all these characters.
Kind of what I think they were going for, was like a Teen Titans kind of feel. These are the young heroes, the up and comers. They're not the Avengers, they're not the X-Men. These are the up and comer guys who are like waiting in the wings to like take their place and get their moment in the sun.
And at this time, you got to remember that DC had, I think, 3 different Teen Titans books coming out every month.
That's part of the reason I could never really get into the Titans, because there was just so much, and it's like which do you follow, and how do they all flow together, and just trying to keep up with all of that is just so much. But like, I always thought it was funny putting Speedball on the team, because I read the short-lived series he had after that Spider-Man annual appearance, and if you've read it, which I have, you see that they're trying at the time, because they had Steve Ditko drawing it and co-plotting it. They were trying to basically bring back Spider-Man from the 60s in the 80s, because that's what Speedball was. It was kind of, he's got that whole thing of like, he's got troubles at school and troubles with his family. He's hiding his secret identity from everybody, all this stuff, all that kind of drama you had with Spider-Man in his early days. They tried to bring it back with Speedball. And yet in this is where Speedball really comes into his own as a character, because he grows beyond just like a Spider-Man pastiche and becomes much more of a well-rounded character. He undergoes changes. He undergoes, power level changes. And it really, makes the character something that is more than just, like I said, just a Spider-Man derivative. And it's just, so again, just some great work here by Fabian, just taking a character like that like most people would say is almost like a one-off joke, basically. And he turned it into an actual character with some real, gravitas behind it.
Yeah, I would agree. Night Thrasher is pretty much a very 90s and dated character. But I think you can update him. To get rid of the skateboard, you could update Night Thrasher pretty good, if you ask me. Let's take a look. What else was on your list? Silver Surfer, 1987. Did you think that was, I mean, there's a lot of different Silver Surfer.
That was my favorite series. I mean, I know I've read the Jack Kirby stuff. I've read the later stuff, some of the earlier stuff. But like, to me, again, especially here with Marshall Rogers as the artist, I mean, just look at that shot right there on issue 2's cover of the Surfer. That to me is the Silver Surfer. He looks like literally a human that's just been dipped in silver. That is how he looks. That's how the surfer should always look. And he's not like a built behemoth like it was later would come along with Ron Lim, who I love Ron Lim's work. I loved his work on the surfer, but he really bulked up the surfer like, you know, like a Hulk type of thing. Whereas in Marshall Rogers' version here, you see he's toned like a surfer, like would actually be, but not like some giant behemoth with rippling cuts of muscles and stuff. And so I've always preferred this version, and I love Steve Englehart's whole cosmic soap opera with the character. You know, like especially in these early issues where like he gets off of Earth finally, and he goes home to Zenla, only to find that Shala Ball is now the Empress, and so she has all these responsibilities, and so she can't be with him the way he wants. So like all his dreams that he had been fighting for to get off Earth are gone. And then he meets Mantis and they fall in love. And then it creates tension with Shala Ball, who then feels like, you know, that this woman is moving in, even though that she can't be with the surfer. She doesn't want him with anybody else. All this great stuff, all in the backdrop of like cosmic threats and, you know, the elders of the universe and the infinity gems. We see them for the first time. You know, all this great stuff. I mean, Englehart really took the whole cosmic concept and brought in a humanity with that soap opera stuff. And it really just made the book a lot of fun to read. You know, it took the surfer from like some kind of like, you know, Zen type of alien character on Earth trying to understand humans to a real character that you really kind of understood and you felt for him.
I remember I did buy the first two runs of this, think up to about issue number 10. But after that, I only bought it sporadically after that. I always found that Marvel's version of Aliens was, I don't know, a bit haphazard as compared to the DC one. Maybe just because there's so much more history in the DC, because you have Legion of Superheroes and all that kind of stuff going way back.
Yeah, I think so. I think, you know, DC was always better at doing alien type stuff than but the thing about Marvels is there's a humanity in every alien that you come across. Like even here, like right here, it's issue 18, Galactus versus the In-Betweener. I mean, it's cosmic entities, and yet they're having a fist fight, you know, and it's, you know, they're trashing planets as they're fighting and all this stuff. But it brought the like cosmic level guys down to Earth in a way, you know, like you see them not just as like these great cosmic entities, but like as beings with feelings and with passions and all this stuff that we all equate to being human. And I always like that about Marvel, how they would humanize the cosmic, humanize the foreign alien that way, so that we can all understand. And I've always enjoyed that about the Marvel type of way they handle aliens.
Let's see. There is a cover here. There's one character there. Well, you can only see the back. He's the champion. He's also on this cover, number 17, down in the corner, the right hand corner. There is, for the champion, I don't know if it's his origin or not. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a book. It was a one shot and it was square bound. And it was basically, excuse me, the champion came down to Earth and set up a boxing ring and basically said to all the superheroes, come at me, you know, I'll take you on one at a time. No one can beat me. And that's all the entire book was, until the Thing gets in the ring with him and the Thing just won't fall. He gets the living crap beat out of him.
Marvel 2-in-1 annual number, I think number 7.
Yeah, I love that book.
But I remember the cover. It's like a white background, and it's all these characters behind the Thing, and he's got on boxing gloves and boxing shorts. Yeah, I remember that one. That's the champion. Yes.
So yeah, that's exactly what you were just talking about, because it's like taking these galactic characters like the champion, bringing them down to Earth, and literally, you know, it's a fist fight. That's all it is. Also, Firelord is another character that there was so many good storylines with Firelord in them, starting with, from my memory anyways, to be the John Byrne X-Men, right?
Yeah, he was in that, I believe. But my favorite storyline with Firelord was Amazing Spider-Man 269-270, where Firelord comes to Earth sort of like as like a vacation almost. And because he doesn't understand the ways of Earthlings, he does some stuff that, like, you know, annoys people. And then he gets pissed off at him, and he goes a little haywire, and that's how Spider-Man gets drug in, because he sees this guy who's, you know, tearing stuff up. He's got to stop him. And so then Firelord gets annoyed at Spider-Man, you know, just I'm a herald of Galactus, who are you, type of thing. And now it's all about pride, you know, because he like lost face, you know, with Spider-Man, you know, mocking him and, like, you know, getting the best of him in moments, and it just keeps getting him angrier and angrier. And then there's this great scene at the end of the story where Spider-Man is out in the open after Firelord had suckered him to revealing himself, you know, out into the open. And he's standing, he's like, I don't know, what do I do now? And Spider-Man just launches into fight, and he's like using his speed and his agility, and he's like hitting him like from 20 different directions all at once. He just keeps hitting on Firelord, and Firelord falls. You know, it gets so bad that the Avengers show up, and they gotta pull Spider-Man off him. Like, he's had enough. It's over. You've won. You can stop now. And Spider-Man's like, do you know who this guy is? He's a Herald of Galactus. He could have killed me. While Firelord is passed out on the ground from getting hammered by Spider-Man. And I love that story.
I have to see. I'm going to go back here 1 second, because there is a version of Silver Surfer that I really love, but I doubt they'll actually have it on here. But the Mobius.
Oh yeah, the parable storyline. Yes,
I actually really like that stuff. I think it was only a 2-issue miniseries.
Yes, it was a 2-issue story with you know, Stan Lee writing and Mobius doing the art. Yes, I remember that story. It's
basically a throwaway story, because I don't think it has any real impact on the actual timeline. It's kind of like the last Galactus story, if I remember correctly. That was also, it's sort of
it's almost like a what if. It's almost like a what if type of story. Yeah, it was a separate continuity that has no connection to the regular continuity in any way.
Also, I love these old covers. I just wanted to go back to some of the Silver Surfer is one of those characters that a lot of people have had their hands on and made their mark with this character, just visually, especially the artists, starting with Jack Kirby.
Yeah.
But the other, and I always like the fact that, well, they tried to in the earlier issues, and it was definitely in the 70s, because Silver Surfer was basically, in Jack Kirby's mind, a version of an angel. So Galactus was a god, and Silver Surfer was the angel. So they started to mix in, you know, Mephisto and supernatural characters with them as well.
Yes.
So let's see, what was the other? I think Miss Tree. Let's see if we can find any Miss Tree. There might be some Miss Tree here. Nope. Although I got to say,
oh, there we are, right there, right there at the top. If you go back up, there's a little icon for Ms. Tree in red right there.
I'll go up in a second, but I love this Hulk 272. That is one of the best covers in comics, if you ask me.
Yeah, it's definitely Milgram at his best. That's like, you know, that Milgram on all cylinders. That's how he could. So a lot of people down on Al Milgram, and, you know, yeah, his art is very utilitarian. It's not very flashy. It's not got a lot of verve, but like when he really put some work into something like that cover right there, it shows you he does have the chops. And, you know, I think a lot of people, you know, again, I understand why some people feel the way they do about his work, but I just think that, you know, he had moments like this. It's like, if he truly was the hack some people want to say he was, he couldn't produce a great image like that.
No. Let's see, Miss Tree. There you go.
Yeah, this is a great series. It's like a so like in the vein of like Mickey Spillane's Mike Danger and Mike Hammer, these types of characters. It's Michael Tree. She's a private detective, and these are like the cases she gets involved in. But some of the cases, you know, are ones she chooses to involve herself in. It's not always like someone coming to her saying, "I need your help." It's she gets involved in the case on her own, and it's almost like she's, you know, sometimes to the detriment of the business. You know, her business partners are sometimes like, "Hey, what are you doing? You know, we've got to run a business here, and you're out here, you know, running doing all these causes for helping people and stuff." And but I really loved it because it was, what I love about Miss Tree is this is what, again, just what they can't do today. They want strong female characters, but they don't know how to make strong female characters without denigrating male characters to do it. And Ms. Tree never needed to do that. She was always a strong character, but she would make mistakes. You know, if you scroll down here a little further, once I think it's around issue 26 or 27. There's one where she's in prison. See, she gets in. She's here right here. The inevitable. See, because she's always out there getting into trouble, and so inevitably she's going to end up like this. Yeah, see, there it is. This is what they don't show with female characters today. They would never be able to do a story where the character was seen as wrong, where the female character was seen as you know, someone who didn't do the right thing, who wasn't always right and perfect at everything, you know, like a Mary Sue. This is what they can't do, and this is what made Ms. Tree so great, was you could tell a story like this with her. And again, she's a strong character, she's a strong woman, but she's not infallible. And she makes mistakes, and she does the wrong thing sometimes, and that makes a great character. You know, that lack of perfectionism in a character, because that, you know, as always is said, the enemy of the good is the perfect. And I think that's no better way to spotlight that than like with a character like Ms. Tree. This is a good character. And that's why, because she's not perfect the way they try to do today, making these like women are just, you know, they're just the bestest of best. They're no one's betterer than they are. And just, you know, but yet Ms. Tree, you know, shows that they already knew how to make great female characters, strong female characters. You didn't need, you know, they're acting like only in the last 10 years this has happened. Oh, we haven't happened for only 10 years. No, they were around in the 80s. They were around in the 70s. You know, they've been around for a long time. You just didn't care, you know, and this is what to me is what a strong female character should be, is what Ms. Tree is.
I have to admit, I've never read any of this, but Ms. Tree, I know from John, because John loves these books. And I can't remember if he told me that Ms. Tree was not really, but in the author's mind, the daughter of another fictional character who was, I don't know, it's like from Dragnet or something like that.
Well, her father was a cop, so that might be why. Her father was a cop, and her husband, who she married, and he got killed, I think, right after their honeymoon, was a private detective too himself, and that's why she's involved in all this. So, you know, she's one who's had a lot of and there it goes, the whole trope of, you know, where like, oh, you got to put women in danger to give the men character their you know, motivations. Well, here Ms. Tree, she had her father murdered, she had her husband murdered, you know, so I don't want to hear that, oh, it never happens the other way. Well, Ms. Tree proves it does happen the other way.
What? I don't even know who is the publisher for this. I've never seen too many books, unless they also printed under a different name. I really don't know the publisher very well at all. All right, let's go. Let's see. The other title on your list was Whisper. I'm not sure if we can find any covers on Cover Browser, but we will try really quickly. Mm-hmm. First Comics. There you go. So, again, First Comics, I have to say, was one of those. Well, it was not only a small publisher, but it was not only an indie publisher, but it was a very small indie publisher at the time, and you could only get it where I was anyways, if you had a comic shop that you could go into. There was no chance you were getting it on the newsstand at all. It was one of those books which it was kind of like Mike Barron's Badger, or other smaller books where unless you really hunted for it, you weren't going to find it.
Yeah. Well, the thing about Whisper is aside from, again, being a strong female character that doesn't need to be perfect, is how many great artists like kind of cut their teeth here. Like here, you can see right here, Norm Brayfogle. This is before his Batman work. And you can see where some of what he would bring to Batman, it all is right here in Whisper.
Also, I was mentioning this last week. Just to let everybody know, what year is this anyways? Probably 86, 88?
Like 80, like 85, 86.
So you got $125 price point on this comic. That was expensive At the
Yeah.
time, it was expensive.
Yes, back when comics were 60 cents, this was like double the price.
Yeah.
So like I said, and you can see like with some of these covers, like look at the color work, the experimentation you can see that Breyfogle is doing. I mean, this is all him refining what he does so that when he eventually goes over to Batman, that's why it's so good, because he cut his teeth on a book like Whisper, working all this stuff out. Some of those great, the rendering style and whatnot that he would use, that he would make his signature. This is where it all begins, is right here on this book.
Kind of love this cover on the left, where you got the serial killer with his axe basically, and shelves full of heads in the background, and some of them burning in the foreground. This was indie covers. This was indie comics for you back in the 1980s.
Yes, and as we go through, you're going to see there's going to be other artists who come to the fore here. Issue 11, that was the final Breyfogle issue, and I think shortly after, I think 2 months after this issue came out is when his first issue on Detective came out. So this was like what he finished right before going over to Batman. Then you got here the new artist whose name on the cover is Spider, but it actually is artist Neil Hansen, who folks might remember from some Punisher work he's done at Marvel and some other things he did there. And again, just beautiful work. Again, early work by Neil Hansen. I love his style. It's got like so much detail in it. Look at that cover right there, that number 18. Look at that image. I mean, that's like poster material. That's like a movie cover. You know what I'm saying? That's how the driving rain, the gargoyle in the corner, the look on her face. I mean, it's just all so cinematic in the way he approached it.
Yeah, it reminds me, again, what you're talking about. Reminds me of later issues of not only Batman, but Huntress as well.
Yes, and like I said, the thing about Whisper is, like it's a story of a woman who gets involved in honor and fighting evil because of her stepfather, and it's again, she's not perfect, because there's a scene in some. Now this book went through a couple of publishers. It started at a place called Capital Comics, but it only got 2 issues out before they went under. And so then the book was, they had 4 issues done, but they only got 2 published. So then First Comics gets it a couple years later, and they put out a special, which has the rest of that storyline that was not presented in the Capital Comics. And so it was so popular, then they put her in a book called First Adventures, which is sort of like First Comics version of Marvel Comics Presents, where they had a bunch of characters in serialized storytelling. Oh, here's a key right here, 29. There's a few issues in here. The first works of artist Steve Epting from Avengers.
Beautiful covers.
And so she was in that, but then it only lasted 5 issues, and then all the characters got their own books, because this is like during the 80s, where like the big indie explosion, and so everyone was getting their own books, and they gave Whisper her own book after this. And in the early issues, in the Capital Comics issues, there's this scene where she gets kidnapped by what do they call those guys in the Japanese? Yakuza. Yeah, she gets kidnapped by the leader of one of those, and he has her thrown into like this pit, and she climbs her way up, and there's like a grate on top, and so she like puts her arms and legs through to hold on to it, and then she pushes herself to get out, and she does, but when she does, the gate swings and it slams down on her forearms, and like her arms are all jacked up now. See, this is the kind of thing, like I said, that they don't show in the modern stuff. Yeah, she escaped, but she jacked herself up doing it. She didn't get out clean. It wasn't just like, oh, this was no big deal. It was, I got out like just like that. It actually shows the character making mistakes, getting injured, not knowing what to do. And then when she gets out, she runs to her stepfather because she doesn't know what else to do, not realizing her stepfather's involved in all of this stuff. And so, so she's like, she doesn't have all the answers. She doesn't know what she's doing. And all she's doing is relying on his training that he taught her in the ninja arts, to try to figure out what's going on and how to stop it. And that's what she does. And that's how this ends up going to where it is.
Yeah, Vaz says, yeah, these are not comics that, unless you knew what you're looking for, you usually weren't going to find it. He says that he got to figure out that Miss Tree and Whisper both were there because of their ads and other books. That was one of the things about indie comics back then as well. You could publish ads for anything.
Just as long as you had the money.
Yeah. There's a little discussion going on about James Gunn in the comments. But actually, I think we will leave it there. We got to the end of Sequential Treasures list, and it was a good list. And we're about 56 minutes in. I quite honestly, one of the reasons, just to let everybody know too, at the end of the stream, one of the reasons why I wanted to do this early, I mentioned this before, is because in honor of my father, his team was the Blue Jays, and they played tonight. I think the game starts. I don't know if it's 8:30 or 9. But anyways, gotta watch the. I gotta go watch the ball game with my family in honor of my father, and we'll see if his team wins. And that's one of the reasons why I just had to get going early tonight, is because I have a family obligation. Let's put it that way. But I thoroughly enjoyed this Sequential Treasure. Thank you very much. I know it was short notice.
No problem. Glad to do it. Like I said, I'm always glad to point out folks to some great comics out there. And just if you don't mind, a little plug here for my channel. I got a channel here on YouTube where I do stuff called Sequential Treasures. Just put it right up there in the search bar. It'll take you right to me. I just posted up a new video today to a segment I call Why It's Great, where I take an issue from the past that I really enjoyed, and I tell you why it's great and why you should check it out yourself. Today I did Excalibur #3 from the 1980 series by Chris Claremont and Alan Davis. Again, just a great series, one I really enjoyed a lot of those early issues. And so going over and check out my stuff there. I do that. I do a thing called Artistry Appreciation, where I take some comic art that I personally own, and I talk about why I think it's so great and what's so cool about the artistic value in it, and some other stuff too. I try to have a lot of fun on my channel. So if you're looking for a channel for some fun, talking comics, talking art, talking good stuff, come on over to my channel and check it out, because I think you guys will really enjoy it. If you enjoyed these two little ditties me and RJ did here, you'll definitely like some of the stuff I do over on my channel.
And we'll let George have the final word. He says anything with Alan Davis is good, even his bad stuff. And I completely agree with that.
I can't disagree with that sentiment whatsoever.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for everybody, Sequential Treasures, and everybody in the chat, everybody who showed up early, and anybody who shows up late and watches this later. Thank you once again. And as I said, there will not be any live stream next week. I will be traveling for a couple of weeks, and I'll be on the other side of the world. So apologies for that. I might have one 2 weeks from now. We'll try and get one in if I can. So thank you once again, everybody, for showing up, and I'll leave it there. And oh yes, go over to Sequential Treasures YouTube channel and subscribe. All right, I'll see y'all later. Bye.
Peace out.